welcome to the Town of Valley Municipal Lighting Plant Commissioners Meeting, January 10th, 2018. And declare the meeting open at 7:03. Citizens Query, Article number 1, 7, which is just about 3 minutes after 7, till 7:10. Also, this meeting is being audio and video recorded digitally and will be shown on Raleigh Community Media TV, Channel 9 Comcast, or Channel 26 Verizon. Review and accept minutes from previous meetings. You just got the one set, Dan?
Yes.
Yes. Has everybody had a chance to take a peek at them? Any questions, comments?
Yeah,
All set?
yep.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, aye.
Motion made and seconded, and we will sign the minutes. Thank you. Okay, item number 3. Raleigh Solar LLC update.
We wanted to talk really quick about an update to the solar project we're doing on Weathersfield Street. I'll let Bonnie talk for a minute first before, and then I'll give you my input after Bonnie's done.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to meet with us. The project is going along quite nicely. We're still tooling through some of the boards, but Dan and I and Barbara have been discussing a little bit about some of the constraints that have sort of unfolded in the industry since we began the project. One of the particular constraints is a tariff lawsuit for all of the supplies, each and every component that's utilized to build a solar array. That tariff is anywhere between 50% to 200% increased in the cost for any of the equipment. So the construction and procurement engineers with whom we've been working to get this project put through, they're willing to share some of the burden, a small amount of the burden with us, but we have to shoulder that increase in cost. As a result of that, the economics for the entire project have changed considerably. So we've been asking Dan if there were any way whatsoever to increase our PPA rate 1/2 cent. And what we would do if he were able to do that with us, and we did run some of the financial models, we would take away the escalator that we had in place. We had a 1% annual escalator in place. We would take away that 1% annual escalator for 5 years. So it's what it really is doing is it really isn't changing the financials very much for RMLP, but it's shifting a little bit more for us to try to absorb that increase in the front of the project. The other reason is the SRAC 2 program. We will not be, as we had hoped to be, mechanically complete by March 30th, 2018. And as a result, we will have a lower SRAC rate to be mechanically complete soon thereafter. And even though the rate is still lower than March 30th, the changes in the marketplace, everything has sort of come to a halt as a result of this tariff. So perhaps there might be a 65-cent anticipated SRAC, let's say, return to the project, but the market is only absorbing 17 cents of that as of now. So that's a substantial spread, as well as just the difference between the 70 cent that we would have been able to put into the project for March 30th mechanically complete to a later date. It adds a minimum of 100 basis points to the economics of the project. So I understand the incredible job, especially Mr. Murray, that you've done over the years for the lighting department fiscally. You know, we're fiscal conservatives as well, and we certainly appreciate that. It's reflected in your financials that we also have to share with any of our lenders. So everyone is quite impressed with that job you've done for the townspeople. But it's a great project for Rowley. I can give you a couple of supporting reasons for that half-cent increase as well. That if you were to take out any of the other factors and just look at the cost of electricity over time, and if you were to take maybe the last 25 years and graph the data on your cost, you would, I guarantee, see a graph that was increasing over time. There might be little fluctuations, but if it were smoothed out, it would be an increasing graph. The other factor that is increasing over time, as we all know, is the cost of labor. So labor for RMLP is something that, regardless of where you derive your power from, we can say with confidence is not going to go down over the next several years. And you know, the demographic is changing overall, so there's some younger folks coming in different skill sets. So the cost of labor is going to increase. The way that RMLP will be able to save money and contain cost over time, we are strongly encouraging you to look at is locally produced power. Locally produced power is going to take away many of the other associated burdensome costs that you have to pay for transmission, for fuel, etc., and also having to go to the spot market and a lot of other factors that go into the day-to-day job. So that's another consideration. The other consideration that is what we believe to be an opportunity cost, where we're residents, we're the landowners, we're the developers of the project, we're working directly with RMLP, that over time we could continue the dialogue for some type of longevity of the project or handing off the project. You know, none of us in this room, although we may think we're going to live forever, we're not. So, you know, right, is fortunate or
I wasn't
unfortunate.
planning on that at all.
We never know, right? But, you know, medicine is changing and other things. So it would be nice to have some type of continuity plan, as well as the factor that if we were to work together for grants or with storage or other things that we perhaps haven't been able to do the work for yet on our MLP side, you know, Dan Folding or anyone else would have the flexibility to call us up as the owner-operators and say, you know, would really like you to consider our adding A, B, C, D. Would that be a possibility? And I can tell you that, of course. We live here. We want the very best for the town, and we want townspeople to be able to, frankly, afford to stay here, and also to have some other commercial businesses come into town. You know, when I look at, you know, I earned my MBA in finance and business law, as well as another professional degree, a medical degree. And when I look at where I have my medical office, you know, power costs are very high, in addition to other associated costs. So if the town, if we had this renewable energy in a way where you produce it locally and it's available to townspeople and or at some point to businesses, I think it's a win-win for the town. There will be an attraction for other types of possibilities that perhaps today we don't have. So those are a couple of points, and I know we're going to get this project done, you know, as long as we get through our boards. I think it's a wonderful thing for the town. We're not going anywhere, and the dialogue remains open. We're hoping to retain the asset, and that's the other thing with that half-cent increase. It allows us to smooth out for the financials and to, as I say, sort of absorb that, you know, that cost that none of us know. We're taking all of that risk on, and we're not passing it on to the town in any way. So going forward, we may be able to, because there's not enough time at this stage for this 2 megawatt system, we may be able to speak with one another frankly and say, well, we have the school, we have the public safety building, we have the library, we have town hall, and other town businesses that utilize power. We would be able to find a way, whether it's a special purpose entity or some other way, so that those costs become zero, or the water treatment plant. And those cost savings will actually be passed on not only to RMLP but to the townspeople, and it would free up a lot of additional money, frankly, for labor or whatever else we don't know is going to be increasing over time. That's all we know, is all of our costs increase over time. You know, and labor is a very big one, and the town's growing. We have more and more, you know, demand for usage over time. And frankly, the labor, you know, market, we're going to have people with different skill sets that will be able to come in and take those jobs. And obviously, they're going to want to be paid for it, in addition to all the great folks we have, you know, today. So those are our thoughts to open the dialogue together. We certainly don't want to put any undue burden or stress or discomfort in any way. We've had a great rapport with Dan along this project, and we want to continue that. So that's basically, that's it.
Okay. Any questions or? Just so the commissioners know, and we've been, you know, between the discussions between Bonnie and myself, we've been very frank with each other. The going rate now for, well, I shouldn't say the going rate. There have been other projects locally that have come in at substantially lower than this project. And as far as if you're comparing apples to apples, I'm not quite sure what the economics of that project, what they're doing with that project. I don't know exactly. All I know is the rates. One project was 6 cents. This project with the half-cent would be 8 cents. What that means for the project, it's an increase in, of course, the PPA of 2 cents over the course of 25 years. Right now, we have an IA interconnection agreement and a purchase power agreement signed at 7.5 cents. The half-cent increase would be, without the escalator over 25 years, would be just under $400,000 increase over the 25 years. And that, I didn't figure in the, you know, doing without the escalator or figuring with the escalator. That's just strictly the half a cent over the 25 years. And that's a very, it's not a given number because there are a lot of variations with output over the course of the years, degradation of panels, and I don't have a sheet that shows the output, the estimated output of the project yet. So I mean, that's just an estimate. So
If I may interject without
Sure.
interrupting your thought there. The panels, the manufacturers state that there's a minimum of a 5% degradation annually. So you compound that. So although we're building a 2 megawatt array, we're certainly not going to get, you know, output of 2 megawatts from the system. And there's a whole host of reasons as to why we're living through one of the reasons currently, aside from position of the sun. But there is degradation. They're merely just glass and minerals on top of the glass film. And, you know, we've had discussions as well as far as upgrading the system. You know, generally every few years we would be able, because we're here, we would be able, if Dan said, you know, hey, there's some new technology available that would help us in some particular way, it would be very easy for us to work together. And I'm not saying that other projects wouldn't necessarily be that way. I don't want to say that whatsoever. But I will say that it's a lot easier when you're dealing with somebody that's 1.5 miles up the road.
As you were speaking,
Yes.
okay, you said that no risk to the town, and you know, it sounds like a joint venture, which this isn't, correct? This is not something.
in the true term of the word joint venture, no. It's a
Project that an independent project, and they'll be selling electricity back to the town.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Through a PPA,
Through a
they'd be
PPA.
selling the output of the project
Okay.
to the Raleigh Light Department, yes.
Well, I just want to make sure nobody misconstrued at home.
The only little difference between an array that's currently functioning in town, where the power is sold back to the town, and that which we're proposing to get done, is we've worked together with Dan for designation as community solar, which is a bit of a difference for the town, and it also allows RMLP opportunities to participate in other programs that perhaps wouldn't incur cost, but would provide with different benefits for the town, and I'm sure Dan can speak better for that.
The community solar program is something that our customers would get a benefit from. There would be, I think we've talked about that before, and the developer, the developer also gets a benefit for, they get an increase in the SREC cost, or the SREC return. It being a community solar, it bumps their SREC return back to them a little bit more. So it is a benefit on both sides, but it is a benefit to the ratepayers, as they would, if they sign up, they would be able to get a return on the electric bill after a certain amount of time. So it's basically, I wanted to talk to the board about it and hear both sides, and basically, we have a PPA and an IA signed right now for 7.5 cents. I'm not sure if we left it at that, if the project would, and you don't have to comment, I don't want you to comment on this, if it would go forward or not. So it's, basically want the commissioner's support, either support or stay where we are, or, either support moving forward, either or. It's kind of, I want you to think about what was said tonight and kind of give me an idea of what you think. And, I think if we, well, I don't know, we can't push it off another month, I know that, that'd be too much.
No, a decision is going to be made. I certainly don't want anybody to feel they don't have adequate time to think about things and ask questions. So, in no way whatsoever do we want that. Would there be another opportunity, Dan, for perhaps you to collect an answer from
If,
the board next week, perhaps, or in the next couple of weeks?
Well, good.
Yeah, I like to think this over, I just
Okay.
want to make a decision,
all right, so we could schedule another meeting for in a couple of weeks.
Sure.
Would really appreciate that, and
Okay.
if there's anything that we could provide to assist and demonstrate your decision, it's not our decision, it's completely your decision, but we'd appreciate at least some thought to help, that's all.
One thing, Bonnie, would be the numbers, the
Okay.
8%, the 8 cents without the escalator,
That's fine.
and an output estimate. That way I can
Yep.
judge how much this is gonna cost on a yearly basis, and I can
Sure.
give that information to the commissioners.
we can
So
do that.
that way we can see real numbers as far as what it's gonna cost.
Right. Okay, and I guess the other question that would be interesting, and it doesn't have to be at the 2-week time, but if there were any interest in dialoguing together about future ownership of a power plant, there's benefit for the town. So we're open to a dialogue.
It's difficult only because that would have to be, and that would be an edit to the purchase power agreement.
Not for this particular part, it could be down, right,
Okay, so that'd be another totally different project.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
just it's a tremendous amount of thought and work, so we're just willing to collaborate together. If there's any interest, if there isn't, that's okay too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, any other questions, or we'll run along to planning board and
Okay,
keep everyone comfortable there.
I'll get that other information to you
Have a
tomorrow
nice day
morning.
tomorrow.
I appreciate it, yeah, they're waiting on that. Okay, thank you, take care.
Good night now.
Bye.
Good night.
number 4. 2018 operations and capital budgets.
And that's the operation and maintenance budget. I'll give you a moment to review it. And this is the proposed budget for 2018.
Is the purchase power 555, 557, is that got this LLC project in place? Included in that?
Yes, yeah, it does. It wouldn't be that much of a bump to that anyway, so it's, this next year, well, the next year it really doesn't, only because it's not gonna be online till March, so it's, enough of it's factored in, yes.
Okay.
How much is the purchase power up over last year?
Almost $500,000 from last year. And that on the way the capacity market works is it's on a fiscal year instead of a calendar year. So we just saw the first 6 months of it from July to January in this budget. The next year we'll see a higher amount from January to July 1st. And then it's gonna decrease somewhat in July 1st through the last 6 months of the year.
Yeah, because there'd be normally be less power consumption, October, correct? This is coming out of the summer months, and going into the winter months before the heating season begins, and you get the same thing in the spring.
Yes. So basically, the back page shows the expense detail.
Yeah.
The really, the biggest one, of course, is the, right at the top, the purchase power increased by, $200,000 from last year. And that's basically just an increase to cover the first 6 months of the year. To make it easy, either the expense account stayed the same, increased by 3%, or increased by a substantial amount because we have a project pending. And some of those accounts are substation expenses increased by quite a bit because we have a couple of projects that we're working on that we need to complete this year. I want to say next year, but we're already in the year, so. One of the other ones is the streetlight and signal system expense increased. No, the meter expense increased by quite a bit because we have one project that we are looking into that would actually get us away from the drive-by metering system and make it into a collection system that would not be drive-by. It would still be, we wouldn't change any of the meters out in the homes. It would just be putting up some collectors around town, so we wouldn't have to take the pickup out on the 8th of every month and drive around and get the readings. It would just be collected at the office instead.
How long does that take to do the meter collection?
Takes about 7 hours. Takes a full day.
A lot of streets in Raleigh.
Yeah.
Used to take 3 weeks.
Well, yeah, you gotta do the walk-by meters, yeah.
And believe me, I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's a couple other ones in here, like maintenance of station equipment and the streetlight balance. The streetlight account is gonna take a little bit of a hit because we're planning on doing some LED conversions of streets this year. So, but other than that, like I said, the account either stayed the same or increased by 3%.
Salisbury's going to all LED.
Merrimack's done it, Groveland's done it, Georgetown is working on it. So a lot of towns are actually going all LED.
How many LEDs we'll do this year?
In the order of probably at least 100, I would say. I have a capital budget number of, what's right here? Street lighting of $100,000 in there for this year. That should cover a large amount of streetlights.
And that's
so.
a significant savings for us.
Yes. Yep. In maintenance kilowatt hour costs, maintenance costs, it's a significant savings. We haven't, we're looking at doing probably starting with the major streets, 133 Main Street, things like that, starting, and maybe some offshoot streets off of those streets, maybe Route 1. Do some of the major streets first, and then we'll still work on the side streets after that.
Really does improve the lighting at night.
Oh, yeah, it does a big deal, good job with it. How close are we to meeting the requirements that we put together about, a year or so ago, that had the police involved, giving us what they thought would be the place to put them?
We finished that.
It's all finished.
Yeah, it's all finished. So, I mean, we could, instead of putting we could put another list in and kind of work with the police and do that again, but we're gonna start doing a wholesale change out, so I don't wanna get involved in too many things with street lighting all at once, so
Exactly.
we'll start the wholesale change out, and if somebody has a issue with because it may come down to complaints about lights.
Right.
So we may have to deal with some of those as well, so. Because they are gonna be brighter than the lights that are up there right now,
Yeah.
in most cases.
I mean, I have one on one side of my house that's LED, and the other side is just a regular light. The LED is, it's so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, also, in the budget, we talked last year about, payroll expenses. And we talked about, just factoring in a percentage amount into the budget. That way, when July 1st came, the amount was already in the budget. So what I did was I put a 2.5% increase in the budget already. So that's already factored in to this budget.
We had talked about that.
We had talked about that, yeah. We just didn't do the amount, so that's just discussing the amount.
Looks good.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out what they come back with for figures, just so that we kind of can keep it on level if at all possible. Because their costs are going up, and the same thing's gonna happen to us on the materials that we buy just to
Mhm.
keep the plant operating.
Yeah.
Those prices are gonna go up too. So,
By the way, we didn't have any significant failures or anything during the snowstorm this past one.
No, 0. Was it the 23rd? We had the couple of days
Yeah.
before Christmas, we had some calls, the guys were out. Pretty much, I think there was 8 hours or 9 hours overtime. They were out for a little bit, but this past blizzard, we had no calls at all. So,
Had some high winds too.
yeah. Luckily, the snow was light and fluffy, and it just
Yeah.
kind of blew away, so that was a benefit. And we didn't have any issues with flooding, so besides no, we didn't have any issues at all with flooding. Even down at the Stackyard Road or down that way, we didn't have any issues at all. We didn't anyway.
Yeah, Ipswich really had some problems, but anyway. Good job by the boys.
yep. Okay, we're all set with that?
Could I just have a motion to?
Accept it.
Yes.
Entertain a motion?
I'll give you that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to accept the budgets. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, this one's the capital budget.
Okay.
Thanks, Bob.
That goes with this one, right?
Goes with that one, yes.
Okay. So we gotta still take the vote, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of jumped the gun on that one.
That's okay. So we do have a motion on the table,
Thank you.
made and seconded. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Let's see, now we go down to item number 5. And it's electric vehicle program update.
All right, at our last meeting, we had a presentation from a gentleman from Sagewell, and we talked about electric vehicle program for the town of Rowley, and he suggested, and I've kind of figured that we would try and get a number of towns in with us, because as he said, the advertising for the program is pricey, and it's kind of hard for a single town to do all the advertising and get dealership and get, you know, people to buy in, you know, with not such a small town, but a smaller town. So what I did is I contacted 5 other towns around here: Middleton, Ipswich, Georgetown, Reading, and I've gotten back good responses from all of them. So they are interested in having a meeting with us and the gentleman from Sagewell to talk about implementing a program. It would probably be a long process, because you would not, I mean, you'd be dealing with this board, but they'd have to go get the program passed through their boards. So it's gonna be a little bit of a process to get this all worked out and through. But at least the managers can meet with the gentleman from Sagewell, and we can kind of get a draft program together, something to bring to the different boards
Yep.
to get an approval, and then that way we can at least, you know, start the program, move forward, and, you know, hopefully keep ahead of this,
Yeah.
you know, the vehicle program, so. Any comments, suggestions on, you know, anything about the program where, you know?
No, I mean, I think it would, if the other towns would get involved, we could pick out a couple of dealers. I don't know if there's a specific vehicle that everybody would be looking at, but at least you could get several dealers and have them tie in with it. Maybe you can get a little cutback when we get them to sell a car to somebody.
Yep, yep.
So it would help us out a little bit that way too.
I think, you know, when the town needs to buy a vehicle, maybe we look at electric vehicles, especially for the light company first, you know, and then.
I have one in the capital budget
Yeah.
for next year, so just,
We
you
had
know.
one before.
Electric vehicle?
Yep.
All electric?
Yep, well, when I say electric, it was not all electric.
Hybrid, oh, okay, yeah. But an all-electric vehicle, I think, you know, just to, because it's gonna come rapidly, and, you know, if we're ahead of the curve, and we're used to doing this, you know, when it happens, you know, in the rest of the community, and people start to look at the value of electric vehicles, I think it's gonna go forward. Again, we talked about it last meeting. Once this battery, you know, this battery that can charge within, you know, they're talking about maybe a minute, something like that, that's gonna have a dramatic change in, you know, the future. I don't know if you saw the other day, there was, NVIDIA had a chip for Ubers, to run the Uber cars. So, I mean, automated cars, electric vehicles, all this is coming.
Coming
you know,
fast.
It's coming fast. So, and then they were talking about a vehicle that, like a store on wheels. So if you wanted to, the store on wheels would show up at your front door, you know, all automated and everything else. So if you wanted to buy a pair of shoes or a tie or something like that, this vehicle would show up. I mean, this future, it's hard for us to understand, but this future's going to come,
Mhm.
you know. And,
And there's a lot more to it than just that.
yeah, but the children, the children today, they'll accept this as
Oh, yeah,
normal.
sure.
Us, it's gonna be like shock, but, you know, but
They
it's,
they had it on the news tonight. A luggage for you, when you go on a.
yes,
plane flight.
I saw that.
And it's automatic, it follows you around. So when you go to get onto the plane, this thing is behind you,
Yeah.
coming along.
It goes on two wheels and it's just like, what's that vehicle that, Segway? Yeah, it's all automated, like, but it's just a suitcase on two wheels, and this thing just, you'll have a device, probably a smartphone.
Yeah.
It'll follow right behind you. Unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah, you see people, you see some
And
poor
you-
person trying to go through the airport, trying to struggle with the bags.
You can get it with the joystick too, so you can control it if you want
Oh,
to.
really? Again, the future.
It
It's
is the
here.
future, it is the future, yeah.
Have you had anybody in town buy them?
There's a few customers in town that have,
Put in the paper that it was free,
yeah.
you know?
Um,
Some of the towns are really a number of cars out
some of the bigger towns that have,
Mm.
if we had like a dealership in town, we'd probably see more, but the towns with actual car dealerships in them see more
there. Yeah,
uptake, or closer to like Metro Boston see a lot
It-
more than we do.
And Kenny, people aren't, really thinking about this right now because they're not their friends or anything else, and I think that's why it's important for us to have the discussion, so people
Oh,
look
yeah,
at it and
no,
say, gee, maybe this is something I should think about, because I only have a 15-mile commute,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that equates out to 30 miles backwards and forward, but you gotta look at the price of gasoline, and right now, what is it? I think it's about $2.50 a
$2.50.
gallon.
Plus, yeah.
And then I don't know, it's the last time we looked at, for electric vehicles, it's equivalent of $1.50 of running the
Yeah.
vehicle.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, that's what people look at.
Yep. Okay,
Thank you, Dan.
so we're up to the last agenda item. Changes to personnel policy handbook.
Okay, the RML Employment Personal Policies is a policy book that was approved by the Board of Commissioners even before I started there.
Mhm.
So any changes to that policy handbook need to be approved by the commissioners, voted by the commissioners, so. The employees and I have discussed a few changes that we'd like to make to the personal policy, so what I'll do is I'll hand out two sheets there's 3 different policies, I'll hand out 2 sheets for each policy. One has the original policy and one has the changes to it. So that is the sick leave policy, and this is what the policy is right now. And the highlight in yellow is what is going to be removed, and this is the policy as it would be revised to. So basically, in a nutshell, if you, what would happen with the sick leave policy is right now there is a number for a four sick day target. So if an employee goes over 4 sick days in the course of a year, they're not entitled to buyback rights for that sick time for the entire year. And it creates a lot of angst for Eric to come up with to do this on a yearly basis, because what happens is you're computing 2 different sick leave values, and so the employee ends up having 2 sets of sick time, some without buyback, some with buyback. So what this would do is it basically eliminates that, and it says whatever sick time you have at the end of the year, you get buyback rights to. And the cap to the buyback is gonna stay exactly the same. The only thing I'm removing is the actual 4-day. So if you go over 4 days, you lose the buyback rights. If you want, I will, we can move on, I'll hand you the other two. And, you know, if you wanna make a decision tonight on this, that's fine, if you wanna, we're gonna have a meeting in another couple of weeks, if you wanna take time to think about it, we can do
It'd be
that
nice
as
to be able
well.
to sit down and be with them.
Yeah, I wanna.
Okay.
take a look at it.
So what I'll do then is I'll hand out the other two. So the next one is the mutual aid policy. And the first one I'll hand out is the current policy. And if, you can tell us the current policy by, on the top, it says the effective date of June 7th, 2007. And the new policy will have today's date on it. So this is what the policy will be changed to. And basically that policy, all it's doing is taking out the reference to double time and the double time on Sundays and holidays, and it's replacing it with time and a half around the clock. From portal to portal, so which means if the employee goes on mutual aid like they did this past, September, they would be on time and a half from the time they left till the time they returned. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And
That was down to Florida?
that was done, yeah, when they went to Florida.
Florida pays back some of that at least, right?
Florida would pay all of that back. Yeah, we just got paid from 2 out of the 3 utilities, and whatever we incur for cost, we bill those utilities, and then they reimburse us for the cost.
Good. It's good that we can work with them that way and have things like that happen, because we can do the same thing. I mean,
Correct.
they can come up here and we'll pay them to help.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if you're in a storm, it makes a big difference to getting things back up and running.
Yep, yeah, certainly does. Well, one more, this is a brand-new policy, so it does not have an old policy. So this is a policy for stipend for area cost of living policy. And it's a brand-new policy, so, I mean, you can just read it and it kind of explains itself. And by all means, if you have any questions over the next 2 weeks while you're thinking about this, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'll answer any questions you have. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything else anybody needs to? That's good, because it's not on the agenda anyway.
I'll give you a motion to adjourn.
Second.
That went down too fast. Motion to adjourn takes priority. All those in favor of a motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. That's it. The end of the meeting.
Thank you.